Well, so let's chat with Phil because today, as we record, there's a pretty big story that's circulating around the Manjaro community and the rest of the web, and that is Manjaro's announcement that they have struck a partnership to ship the closed-sourced FreeOffice suite by default in Manjaro Linux. And I had a chance to take a look at it because I'd never really messed around with it, so I'll share some thoughts on there. But I thought, let's get Phil on to just get an idea of what's going on from the top of the project on this. So, Phil, thanks again for coming on the show, and welcome for your first time on Linux Unplugged.
No problem. Thanks to having me.
So, in your own words, characterize today's announcement.
Well, it was announced that we have a partnership with SoftMaker, who is the producer of FreeOffice and a bunch of other open source products, or in the case also proprietary products. They ship out in several systems like macOS, Windows, and also on Linux.
And it features pretty, at least from what I can tell, pretty sweet compatibility with Microsoft Office and other commercial Office products, and it has a similar look and feel to commercial Microsoft Desktop Office.
That's exactly, because they started with Windows, then moved over to macOS, and finally got also to Linux. And we got approached a couple of weeks ago from them directly to see how we can include FreeOffice in our distribution.
What appealed to you? I mean, what was the big motivating factor? Was part of it the better compatibility, the similarity to what users migrating to Manjaro might already be familiar with?
Well, it's a German company, for instance, and most of us are also from Germany, so it's just a smaller hub to go to them directly. And also with the talks we had with them, they offered to adjust the FreeOffice software and even the other products they might sell for our Linux distribution to make it more compatible. And if we have some issues with it, we can present to them directly and have a direct line to their developers to fix issues if we find something. So, also, they are open to change whatever we might need.
So essentially, there is a business relationship, or a real actual partnership between you and the makers of FreeOffice, in such that you have a channel to give feedback and whatnot?
Yes, exactly. So we start with FreeOffice, and then we see how that works. And it was a test balloon with the release candidate 5 and 6 to see, how does it work? How does it look? So SoftMaker also checked it from their side, if it's fit their needs as well. And then I announced it with RC6 to the public as well. And now we are in a situation that we have A, people who like it, and B,
Sure.
people doesn't dislike it.
That's to be expected, I suppose. Was there a monetary exchange between the Manjaro project and SoftMaker for this partnership?
No, it's just the beginning. So they also have the SoftMaker Office, which might be then in consideration to see what we can do with that. But for the beginning, it's just the partnership of we can say what is wrong or what we can improve, and they will fix it and such. And based on that, we can build on top of it.
That's really great that they are willing to work with you at that level, because you're shipping. Manjaro has always been a very practical distribution, solving problems for the end users that other distributions don't necessarily solve. And this is yet another one, making that a smoother experience. And the type of user that needs Office software isn't necessarily generally the type of user that is going to be particularly savvy at solving compatibility issues and whatnot. So this seems like a very practical choice for the end users. And at the same time, you now get a channel, you get a partnership with this company to help guide feedback, which seems like a very, very good opportunity for the project overall. So I have to probably address what the big criticism has been so far, which is, well, why do this when LibreOffice is perfectly capable and it's free software, so therefore, by default, that's what we all should be supporting?
Well, it's a default, and either way, we will stack out of the stack and say, hey, we will be bold and try something different as the rest. So we will be noticed. This is one of the considerations we did. And also the company is 30 years in the business, and they make a living out of the office sellings. And they're willing to make it happen for several platforms and willing to include external considerations to their products. And that is one of the consideration we also made in our decision making, that the world is changing. And if a company sees Linux as a platform, it's a plus.
Right. It's a recognition of desktop Linux in a sense, isn't it?
Exactly. And it shows also to us that the Manjaro is on the map somehow and widely used. And we were really humbled that a German company is approaching us, since we're still a hobby project. So not everybody achieved that.
Wimpy, as a distro maintainer yourself, I'm curious on your thoughts about the inclusion of LibreOffice as the default, because it's the free version.
I'm somewhat surprised and a little bit dismayed at the community reaction to this, because there are many Linux distributions that ship by default, for example, Google Chrome and Steam.
NVIDIA drivers.
Or NVIDIA drivers. That one I'm not prepared to put in the same category, to be honest with you, because that's all about enabling, absolute functionality in the device that you own.
All right, that's fair, actually. I think that's a really good point. That is a good distinction. It's about fundamentally enabling the hardware that you paid good money for.
Right. Whereas, if you've got Firefox available, why Google Chrome? And if you've got SuperTuxKart available, why Steam? Or why not itch.io, also proprietary, or why not, games from Humble Bundle? So I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on here, because there seems to be an application class which I'm not prepared to accept that this is proprietary, but then there are other applications which is, that's obviously going to be proprietary, or that's fine. I want the functionality that thing gives me, and you get a free pass on that. So I can understand where Phil's coming from. Phil is trying to build the future for Manjaro and try out new things, and we should all be trying out new things and feel that we're in a safe place to do that. And we shouldn't be lambasted for experimenting or trying to improve the Linux landscape, because after all, since 1994, what I've been seeking to achieve is computing parity on my Linux desktop. And we're very close to getting there these days. And why stand in the way of achieving that for ideology that...
Well said. Yeah, well said. I completely agree. You're right. It has been. And in the case of an Office suite, a word processor, a spreadsheet, whatever, that seems like the quintessential get your job done tool. The quintessential, I don't really care.
Those for fun,
right?
Right.
For me, what I really want to be free is my core libraries, my kernel, my desktop environment. I always want to have a free browser option forever. I always want to have something on my system that's a free browser. That's always a big requirement of mine. I start to get less picky at the more like layer 7 type basic applications, like an Office Suite application or a VLC type video player. Like, I just don't really care if that's not open source, as long as the core system, as long as the fundamentals are free.
But we have it better than that, right? Because we do already have great open source implementations. This move's not really are they arguing that LibreOffice is going to be really hurt by this? I don't think so. I think the development's going to continue to be active and healthy over there, and it's still a great choice if you want to use an Office suite.
Phil, this has to be a tight line to walk, because you've got two really two sort of conflicting positions here. You've got folks that want to see you move the distribution forward, and you said something there that really caught my attention. It's a standout feature now too. It's a differentiator. So it could be really good long term for Manjaro, just because it could get more recognition. It's going to be something that's stand out different in every single review of Manjaro now. It's going to call that out. When people are talking about moving over to Linux, and they ask, well, what distribution supports my Office documents the best, which is legitimately a workflow for people, Manjaro's name may get mentioned now at the top of that list. Like, it could open the distribution up to new categories and types of users. So it's clearly could be potentially good long-term for the distribution. At the same time, you've got people that say, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And it could upset long-time members of your community. I'm curious how you handle that. From a creator standpoint, how do you deal with that? How do you not get sort of demotivated when these kind of conflicts arise?
Well, I'm highly motivated with everything, and the team is strong behind us. The decision was not made singly by me. It's also discussed with some of the team members, which were included in the discussions made with a soft maker.
Can you expand on that a bit? How does that kind of process work inside the project?
Well, we're currently on the leap that Manjaro is recognized, and that's why we will change the structure of Manjaro itself, because a lot of projects are hobby projects. Most of us work on the side, so everybody has a day-to-day job, and on top, when we come home, we have to work for Manjaro as well. So some of those aspects will change in a real manner. Real soon, and based on that, we have more time to discuss with companies like Software Maker and others approaching to make Manjaro as a distribution secure for the future.
I would love for you to come back and tell me more about that when you can.
Sure, we'll do that. So it's no problem for that. The main reason we made the move with the Software Maker in general, or with snaps we did in the past with Canonical at the Snapcraft Summit this year, is that commercial products have the problem to implement their software on the Linux basis because we are so differentiated and splittered up. And Snaps, for example, is a baseline to make the publishers available to say, hey, this is the standard library. If you go on that, your product will work out. And Snapd is not only for Canonical and Ubuntu anymore, it will work on other distros. And we are humbled as Manjaro that we work with them to make also those things happen. Sure, there's Flatpak and app images as well, but the industry needs a standard, and maybe this is one of the moves. And
so as a project, do you see the most desktop opportunity with Snaps?
It depends. In our team and the discussion so far, Snaps has a little bit more features than Flatpaks. Flatpaks are more from the Red Hat section, Snaps more from Canonical, so we are currently somehow in the middle of it. And we have to see which side we go. It's like in the Matrix, the blue or the red pill. Any pill might be there, or we don't take a pill at all because we don't like drugs. So it's always your choice.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of great applications now shipping in both. It is like where we're at now with this whole thing, Wimpy, feels a bit like a whirlwind. And there's more and more opportunity out there. So Wimpy, I'm curious from your perspective, where you think Snaps could fit in with Manjaro.
Well, obviously, as Phil has just alluded to, he joined us at the Snapcraft Summit earlier this year. And personally, I spent a lot of time working with Phil, and probably my defense of Phil and Manjaro earlier betray my true feelings in that I feel I've made a friend for life, having met Phil, in Montreal earlier this year. And that's what happens when you get a bunch of, free software developers in a room together working on stuff. You do establish relationships and friendships. And so, I want to see Phil and Manjaro succeed. And I would like to think that what we can bring through Snaps and the relationships we have with significant ISVs will benefit Manjaro and other Linux distributions as well, not just Ubuntu, because, I'm in a weird position at Canonical in that, I work in probably one of only two departments where we don't actually care just about Ubuntu. We care about the Linux ecosystem at large. So I'm in an awkward place. I really want to see Phil succeed. I want to see Manjaro succeed. And I hope that Snaps can bring something to that story for them.
Yeah. I think that's really neat to see you guys working together.
Yeah, it is. It is a great example of the groundwork laid by Canonical that could, in some scenarios, only be used, but to benefit them, but really does benefit all Linux users who want diverse platforms.
So, Phil, I'm really excited to see that there's sounds like a lot in just the near future for Manjaro going on. What's next now after this announcement? So now it's going out in a release for people to try. This isn't the final version, but it sounds like this is probably pretty set. And LibreOffice still going to be available for people to install from the repository, I imagine?
We have LibreOffice also there, and if the community editions say, no, we don't like the FreeOffice opportunity there, and they still want to ship the FreeOffice version, the LibreOffice version in that case, it is also fine. So, because in Manjaro, we will say, okay, the flagship editions is what the core team or the team of Manjaro might say which suits you best. And the community editions are based on community maintainers, and they say a little bit different. But most likely the main tools are the same, because this is one of the features of Manjaro, to have the usability enabled in all the editions we ship, to have a familiar place, and you can simply switch over your desktop user interfaces and still have the same tools there. And since we just said, okay, it might be a possibility to add FreeOffice as the default Office suite, we are still looking for the feedback from the community, because currently they dislike it, because A, they didn't know about that it exists, B, it's proprietary, which is scary for most of them, and I think they don't like changes, because LibreOffice was there forever and was always pre-installed.
Sure.
So why use a different Office suite? Also, the first thing what come up was OnlyOffice, which we didn't approach yet or were not approached by. So yeah, sure, OnlyOffice is also there. So
okay,
there's
options.
a lot of
That's good.
a lot of options there with Office suites now.
Good. Well, thank you for helping just clear it up and coming on the show and talking about it straight from the source. I think that helps when there's a lot of different conversations going on. I think it's good to get it directly from the project. As things develop in the future, Phil, you are welcome to come back on here and share how things go or other project news that comes up. Would love to keep the hailing frequencies open, as Wes always says.
Sure, why not?
And you're welcome to stick around for the rest of the show, too. We will also, by the way, have a link to information about Phil and as well as this release, which is available for testing right now. We'll have the link in the show notes over there, which you can check out. Rockin' XFCE 4.14 Pre-3.
Ooh.
Don't tell Joe. Don't tell Joe. He might have to go check it out. Well, thank you, Phil, very much. That was very insightful, and I think I'm very hopeful that it works out, because it's a nice differentiator. I like to see people changing it up a little bit, and it's neat to see differentiating in a way that's kind of new.
Well, I will say too that as a Manjaro user personally, Phil, thanks for coming on. First of all, thanks for starting the project. And personally, I don't care what Office software is on my machine.
Yeah, I gave it a download.
As long as it gets the job done.
After this news, I gave it a download, and I like it. It's quicker than LibreOffice. It feels lighter, and it does, it has a ribbon. It looks a lot like Office.
It looks good, yeah.
And so then we did a little digging into their revenue model. It seems pretty safe. It's not like creepy or anything. They sell SoftMaker Office directly if you want to buy the commercial version, which adds a few features. And they also have a special like fonts division that does a special typeface stuff that makes money. So then they use the the FreeOffice to help people find out about the product and whatnot in a very competitive space. It actually makes a lot of sense. So I think I'm going to leave it installed. If I have to use a doc or DocX or something, well, I'll use this instead of Google Docs now.
The funny part about all of this is I almost never have an Office suite installed on my machine anyway.
No, I mean I would legitimately just use Google Docs, and now I won't. So in a way, it's sort of I think it's at least an upgrade in privacy. So
you're back on desktop Linux.